Welcome back to Brothers in Rhythm podcast episode 2. Initially, when I set out to do what we did in episode 1, I planned to get further, but it's there's a lot that needs to be said, a lot of ground that needs to be gone over. So we decided to take a breather.
As your wife and manager.
Oh, yeah, the production team was
spiritual help.
The production team came in and thought it'd be the best thing. So
it's always good to take a breather.
It is.
Yeah, and Wim Hof is one of the people that's been helping you breathe through all of this, isn't he?
Mate, amazing.
What would you have done without Wim Hof?
And I didn't even know his story either when I started doing his breathing sessions. I actually came across them through randomly the Goop Lab with what's her name?
Oh yeah,
Gwyneth Paltrow.
Gwyneth Paltrow, yeah.
And that was my first ever sighting of the man, and I just thought he was a hero straight away. I was like, who is this guy?
The Iceman is a hero.
The Iceman, Wim Hof. Do check him out if you haven't.
Breathe in.
Breathe in.
And let it go.
And let it go.
See, that's the bass.
That's you have to do it. With resonance.
Yeah.
And meaning. All the love, all the power, and Wim, if you're watching, hey, you never know.
Big thank you.
Thank you.
Big thanks to Wim for looking after my husband, because it's been one of your many guides, and I know in future podcasts you're going to be talking more about different healing things and the ways
healing gurus, spiritual guides and gurus and people that can help you through, even if you don't meet them in person, through their knowledge and their experience and what they've gone through.
Yeah.
And why they're doing what they're doing, it's with real meaning, and the power of that is a powerful thing that can help people on their healing journey. So we will talk about all of those things more. I've got Andy Nathan lined up for a really good podcast where we're going to be talking about some of those things. So that'll be great. But we are here on episode 2, and we are still talking about
what happened to Tim,
my brother,
your brother,
Ross's brother,
and many brother's brother.
Many a brother's brother. And if any of you are out there watching, you can pick up the phone and get in touch.
How many foster brothers did you have? 20 odd.
20 odd, yeah. and I love them all.
And sisters.
And love them all dearly. And I love them all dearly as brothers and sisters.
I know you do.
We didn't welcome people into our home and pretend to be a family. We were a family. Yeah,
I know. And I know coming together with the brothers again at some point it's going to be a really important thing. And
it has to happen. It will. And, I have faith in that.
Well, we've got a date to talk about later, haven't we? But first we're going to talk about what happened when Tim was informally sectioned and he went to a hospital in Worthing.
Under the Sussex Partnership Trust.
In the Sussex Partnership Trust. It's a hospital called Meadowfield. I know a lot of people in this area will have had experiences with the hospital.
And at the time when Tim was unwell and I wanted him to go to hospital, I didn't want him to go necessarily to a psychiatric hospital. I just wanted to take him to the hospital, to A&E, just to have him checked over.
Nobody wants their loved one to go to a psychiatric.
With him, not what happened. And that wasn't because I knew about these places and knew what they were. I didn't. I had no idea. If I did, I would have kept him away.
And this is not about blame or anything to Meadowfield or anything. And we're sure there's lots of people trying to do good things. But as we said earlier, the care system is broken. There's no two ways about that. And a lot of the times when people are going in, they're not getting the care.
No. In this experience of what happened, they completely missed the mark of what the root cause of the issue.
And being his brother, that knows him better than anybody else.
The only person that could have told him.
Yeah, and you don't say that lightly. I don't say that lightly either.
We spoke in episode 1 about how close me and my brother were, and obviously losing our father when I was 17, he was 27. He became my father figure, my hero, my superhero.
You raved together, you had adventures together.
That's something else,
Shag girls together.
we didn't talk about that.
We're
in
not
episode
together.
1. In the run up into him actually going into hospital, one of the first things he asked me to do to be involved with his care, with his talking to his therapist, was to write him a letter, and talk about how I felt he may have changed over in the last few years. And that letter was entitled "My Superhero," and he still is.
Always.
Always. Yeah.
Always. So Tim made the decision himself to
go in informally. Yeah. So he wasn't actually sectioned.
Yeah.
And
he needed a break.
He needed a break from his situation and his environment. And due to fear, he didn't want the family talking to the doctors, really. There was a bit of that going on, and we didn't know any information. We were kept in the dark. This, what I'm going to read out next, actually, he'd been in a few days, and I didn't get this until just before the inquest this year, this bit of writing. But this was the place he was in after being admitted. I think it'd be good to read this out.
He's sitting in the garden at Meadowfield.
He's in the garden, yeah. And these are my brother's words.
You can do it. It's a beautiful letter. You don't have to do it, though.
I want to. Life can be hard. Life can be hard work, sorry. But it can be full of memories and lots of laughter. The friendships that can be cemented are eternal. There is something special about sharing a journey with strangers, thrown together in the middle of total chaos. That reminds me of being in the hard side. We can be united as one. We can talk and we can listen. Together, we can complete our own journeys. As one, we are an unstoppable force. Tim, 9th of May, 2020.
It's a lovely letter. So right. Eternal.
As I say, I wasn't given this until this year. At this point, my brother had been taken away to the hospital and I was being prevented from communicating with him. The next day, a family member made a call to Meadowfield and asked them to ask Tim for his consent for them to speak with them, which he gave. It's recorded on his notes, which was included in the serious incident report at his inquest. And he said, yeah, okay. And the hospital person went back and spoke to this family member. And they proceeded to really go in on him, saying that a number of things were really concerning them. And some very, really not nice things about someone who was very unwell, just gone into hospital. And it's recorded that Tim asked the member of staff what had been said. And they shared the information with him. And one of the things that they said was that they were denying him having access to money. And he asks them, why are my family stopping me have any money? This is the day after the letter the note that I just read you out.
So calls went on. Tim still had his phone, didn't he?
Tim had his phone. I was on the phone to my mother at this point. When this call was made by the family member, I was speaking to my mother.
You had no idea.
At the time, I had no idea this call was going on. I didn't find this out until the inquest this year about this call and who had made it. And what they'd said had really upset him. And what he'd been made to believe was completely untrue. And what he did next was completely out of character. Reading back through my text messages in my phone. It's nothing but love. Nothing but love. My last message to him was that I'd taken his dog Charlie for a walk. That I loved him very much, and I just hoped that he'd get well soon. On the 11th of May, in between 2 a.m. in the morning and 7 a.m. in the morning, I received the following text messages. And I read these out just so you can feel the full impact of the truth of this, because this is not my brother. Give Mum £199 tomorrow, or I will send someone round to collect, and you have one chance, or you and your scumbag wife will pay. And I mean it, cunt. And then fuck off out of my life. And then a couple of hours later, in the middle of the night this is, TikTok cunt. Here's Johnny, cunts. A couple of hours later, time's ticking, cunt. £100 by the end of the day. Give Mum money, or I will send someone round to collect it by Wednesday. TikTok. I was in so much fear.
I woke up to I can't quite explain how much fear and how scared Mike was for his brother and for us all right then. It was so unnatural, and obviously I know we at this point thought he was being looked after. You know, he's in hospital.
I thought he was going to be getting looked after and getting care.
So it was a huge shock, you know, a huge shock, and couldn't understand what was going on. So I woke up and I called the hospital, and it was very strange because she just said, if you're scared, then just phone the police, and put the phone down. And now, I've never been in this kind of situation. You've never been in this kind of situation. And we were basically doing as we were told. And we have really been often, you know, it was not often, all the time, every step of the way.
We didn't know what was the right procedure, what was the right thing to do.
No.
They weren't helping us.
They weren't helping us.
We were scared.
We'd been shut out from the family since being shut.
Shut out on the 6th of May.
Door was shut. So we weren't getting any information. We didn't know what was going on. So we did call the police. Not because we wanted to get Tim into trouble for any reason, but we were told to do that. And we were really, really concerned that he had got himself involved with somebody, that something was going on, because everything was just
unnatural.
And it wasn't just, you know, that Tim was, I've suddenly gone crazy, because, you know, this crazy word and everything gets bandied around.
What was happening felt crazy.
We knew it wasn't natural.
Yeah.
And we knew that this was the opposite of everything that you knew about your brother and that I'd known about your brother since I married you. And the level of fear for everybody's safety at this point, when we'd already gone through 4 days before that, the worst day from trauma world.
We'd been through a lot before that as well, and you know, even before the 6th of May.
And we were scared.
One of the, you know, my brother confided in me about talking about historic child sexual abuse, but he also said that he had shaken our mother by the shoulders. And he demonstrated this on me. It was graphic, and it was very, very frightening. So the fear factor for the danger everybody was in had been ramped up from there.
And you've been programmed all your life to protect your mother.
Yeah, both of us.
Both of you.
Yeah. Tim even said his own words. So after he told me everything he told me, was, if I was you, I would be doing worse. And this wasn't his fault.
So we didn't know what was going on and why. Obviously, we didn't know anything about this phone call, and we didn't know why he was getting angrier.
With us, specifically.
Were these text messages come out of the blue through the night, we weren't greatly concerned.
None of this was coming out of the blue, though, because also prior to, as Tim was going into hospital when we were locked out, family members were telling him that we wanted him sectioned and that we wanted him locked up and that we were after my mother's money and house and wanted to move in with her. Actually, in the weeks leading up to this, he actually rang me one day and asked us if we wanted to move in, didn't he?
He did.
I was like, what?
He did, and yeah, I didn't know your mum had any money, apart from anything else.
As far as I'm aware, she hasn't.
Unfortunately, or in these situations, people can use things against you in the most horrible way when you're vulnerable. And obviously, we tried for a baby when we got together, but I was older, and it's never been the be all and end all to us, is it? We were very happy, and I've never wanted IVF because I didn't want to do that to my body at this age. And so I'd never wanted IVF, and all of a sudden I was being told that I wanted mother's money for IVF, which was just shocking that anybody was even talking about my fertility.
Also, another thing that Tim had said before he went into hospital was just because you had your mother sectioned.
Yeah, so somebody had led him to believe that I had my mother sectioned, and that is not true. It is a fact of the matter, actually, is that nobody can have any body sectioned.
No, only a mental health assessment team have that power.
A mental health assessment team, and it is a strong process.
Timothy wasn't.
Exactly that. And this is a big process. And yeah, of course, I never had my mother sectioned. I did help my mother out at one point with some rehabilitation, which was at her request.
These lies being told to him, we didn't know at the time, did we?
And we didn't know. We didn't know why he was being angered. We didn't know why he was so enraged. And
why he was being triggered.
And where it was coming from and where it was triggered. So it was really, really scary. And I'm fully happy to hold my hands up to saying that all of a sudden, I was suddenly very, very, very scared for myself because there was an awful lot of attack being sent in my direction, and I didn't know why. I was like,
turned up with birthday cake.
I turned up with birthday cake and thought, and I knew you were helping Tim with his therapy, so it was a very, very scary time. However, when we spoke to the police, we asked them to come. Because our main concern, and I know your main concern at all this time was
my elderly mother.
Was your elderly mother.
Who Tim was looking, he was her primary carer. He was the one there day to day. I was second primary carer. And obviously with him being unwell, my next major concern is the health and welfare of my mother. So the whole time that Tim was in hospital, we were around. That we were allowed back in the house after that, weren't we? And we popped round and made her food.
We were, and we took PC.
I took her to the doctors and got the GP to come and see her.
Yeah, and we took PC down out of the house.
And things seemed to be getting. And we took the police officer to the house, not to have Tim.
Tim wasn't there. So.
He's in hospital, yeah. We wanted him to see what was going on because we couldn't make sense of what was going on. It was all so unnatural.
Exactly.
And he did come to the house.
Now,
PC Dan Gale, which is a name that comes up again later in this podcast series, which is probably going to be 3 episodes, to be fair.
Yeah, I think it will be. It's an ongoing story. What I didn't know then, and what we only found out recently, is somebody told Tim that it was me that phoned the hospital. And this is...
And said also, what provoked these text messages coming through. That's what triggered it.
And this is what triggered it. Now, that anybody could lie to people when they're vulnerable and when they're not well is the most devastating thing in the circumstances. And I just want to say that it's been really, really traumatic knowing that he was led to believe that for me. And yeah,
it's despicable.
And unfortunately, due to that, consent to talk to Mike was taken away while he was in hospital, and so Mike was left in the dark.
And as I say, our relationship was so close. He was my father figure, and he saved me, and I saved him. So to have our connection broken like that was a really unnatural place to be.
For you both.
For us both. I even so Tim was in the hospital for a while. Came out on the 1st or 2nd of June. 1st of June, he had a day release day, and this is where where things with the other siblings started to go a bit weird, because they knew that he'd come out and gone to see our mother, and I was not told, and I couldn't work out why.
Maybe I'll bring Ross in quickly now, because I know Ross saw him around this time.
Ross was there, so yeah, we'll bring Ross back in.
Bring Ross back in, I'll be back in a minute.
At this point, as we were saying, me and Sash, we were not being given much information, being told that he didn't want to disclose any of the hospital information with any of his family, which was concerning us as well. And I didn't know what day he was actually being released. All I did know, or was told by another family member, was that he had been diagnosed with bipolar at this point. And I found out at the inquest that the psychiatrist diagnosed him with that the day after he sent me those text messages that I read out. But they didn't record those text messages in the hospital, and they didn't, take into consideration what was going on the night before he was diagnosed. And this is one of the failings listed on the serious incident report, that they didn't communicate well enough with family members. But so on the 1st of June, he did come out, Ross, and you were at our mother's house, and he came back. Can you tell us what happened?
I wasn't there.
The last time you saw him, when was that?
I turned up and he was there.
You turned up and he was there?
Yeah, I turned up. I was already on my way around there, and then when I got around there and I walked into the kitchen, then I noticed that he was there, and I was like, well, I didn't think you were out, but he was there.
That was a total shock to you. You just walked in and there he was. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I know I'm pretty sure he had to go back that day, because
that's right. It was day release.
He gave me.
I wasn't told at the time.
No. Well, this is the issue, I feel like, to be honest. He seemed quite happy, to be honest. He seemed like old Tim.
When you walked in?
When I walked in, he seemed like old Tim, and then, for a bit, and then he sort of switched, I'd say, personally. He didn't like the fact that I was talking to you. But, at the end of the day, I'm in the middle of it.
He was paranoid and scared, wasn't he?
He was paranoid and scared, and,
You don't have to say exactly what was said, but it was the last time you saw him, wasn't it? And again, he spoke to you out of character in a way that he wouldn't normally speak to any of us.
Well, yeah, I think he spoke to me in a way that I was concerned and worried and shocked, because that is not the things he said to me is something that I never thought would come out of my brother's mouth, not towards me anyway. So yeah, for him to say that was, you brought it up with her, and it's. That
was the last time you saw him, right?
That was it. Didn't see him after that. I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel safe enough to go back round there again. And the only way I would have gone back round there again is if you were with me.
But I wasn't allowed, was I?
But you weren't allowed. So it was what can you do then?
So yeah, at that point, that was the last time Ross ever got to see his brother. I got to see him one more time after that, but not for a conversation. We didn't get to talk. We didn't get to communicate.
No, we did. You desperately wanted to talk to your brother more than anything in the world.
That's all I wanted.
never seen anybody want to talk to somebody so much. Obviously, just to find out if he's okay and to be able to help him, and that all it was, and to find out why he thought the things that he thought and
the
what
things
was
that I were
going on.
told as well.
And the things you were told.
Although my brother sent those messages, there were other things that we were told that Tim was saying about my wife specifically. Really graphic, horrible things, which I now know is not true.
And yeah, the cat going off talking. It was, and you tried to see him. We both, well, you went to see Mum to see what was going on. And
at this point, so when he came out, my mother was saying that I couldn't come round to the house anymore. We'd been going around there the whole week. He was in hospital. As soon as he came out, it was, no, you can't come near the house when Tim's here. That I'd have to phone up and book in a time to come and see my mum.
And that he wasn't allowed to talk about his brother.
And that I wasn't allowed to talk about Tim. It was just so unnatural, before since I moved out in 2013 with my wife, I was there every couple of days, pop in whenever I want, had the front door key, I didn't have to ring her and tell her when I was coming.
And the last time you saw him was in the road, outside your mum's house. He just bought an Audi TT when he came out of hospital.
Yeah, in cash.
And he wasn't.
And this is relevant for later, the fact that he was spending so much money.
And he wasn't looking great. I might try to talk to him, but he carried on driving down the road, and unfortunately, we were then prevented by other family members
from talking to him.
Was prevented from entering the family home.
Yeah, and the next.
And that's the last time you saw.
That's the last time I saw him. The next thing was a family meeting, wasn't it? That's the next significant event.
So while you were doing as you're told, and not allowed to
allowed to come round, but allowed to phone.
But not, yeah. So you weren't allowed to contact him, so you didn't. And
wasn't allowed to just turn up, so I didn't.
And then your mum, you had already taken her to the doctors before about her heart, and then there was a heart appointment, a hospital appointment.
Worthing Hospital, yeah.
And you wanted to talk to your siblings and to see if you could drive your mum to hospital.
That's right.
Unfortunately, this date was 25th of July 2020. It's a day I'll remember all my life. I'm not going to talk about that in this podcast about what actually happened, but I'm going to talk about that in my own podcast. If you would like to read my full and true account, it is on the iStream Radio website. This was the most violent day of my life, and I accompanied Mike to a meeting, and unfortunately at the end of the meeting,
other siblings, Tim wasn't involved.
Tim was not there, and you can read my account. Unfortunately, at the end of this meeting, when I tried to leave the house, I was ABH assaulted by a man I don't really know, but this is a family marriage into the family member. It was a horrific assault. Since that point, the perpetrators has denied it happened, and
the police have failed to act.
And unfortunately, a long story short is the police failed to act. The account is of that on the radio website, but unfortunately, this had now escalated into serious physical assault, which was unprovoked.
We were already in a state of fear.
We were already in a hyper state of fear as to everything that was unnatural and going on. And so I went to the police, and unfortunately, because we were then told to stay away for our own protection.
And we did that.
We were then even more removed from being able to do anything or speak to anybody.
Or support or help and do all the natural things that we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Communicate. In any mental health situation, it needs to be pointed out right here. I know this is a bit of a complicated story for people to hear, but isolation and stopping people talking is not the answer.
It's
the most damaging thing.
And I would say to anybody out there, you know, a lot of people are struggling with their mental health. A lot of things go on in our lives where we've got to kind of work out how to make our mind tick and why we're not happy and why things aren't feeling so good for us. And we all deal with that. Everybody has their mind. Everybody has their own mental health.
Everybody has their mental health.
Everybody has their own mental health to deal with. It's no secret that the most important thing is to talk and to talk openly. Be careful who you trust. I will always say that and I think it's a really important point.
And how you do it as well.
How you do it and who with is really, really important. Be careful that you can trust these people. But I would also like to say to everybody, if there's something wrong with your mind, you haven't got a disease. And it is something that is not just your problem. Whoever you're with, the environment you grew up in, the things that you've dealt with in your life, you've created. We all do. We all create coping strategies to deal with these things in our life. And anybody that just goes, "You're crazy, you've got a problem," just go over there.
There's something wrong with you.
Take your diagnosis and go and sit in your house on your own and take those meds and you'll be all right. You're not going to be all right. Loneliness and isolation on all kinds of different levels is the most difficult thing to deal with. And then be able to get through it and be able to be okay with yourself and with your mind. We all need support. We all need love. We all need care. We all need people around us. Nobody needs to be on their own.
No one.
But we were isolated.
We were.
And as much as we knew lots of things about how this was wrong, we weren't able to do anything about it.
No, we stayed away. I even didn't ring for a while. And I then received a text message on the 12th of September. And this is only the second message after that meeting. There was one kind of wishy-washy message, but then this message from a family member. And we'd stayed away at this point. And it just said, the long and short of what it said was that due to my behaviour,
that Tim had moved back in with Mum.
Tim had moved back in.
First and foremost.
That's right. To let you know that Tim's moving back in with Mum. Because when he originally came out of hospital, he went into his own flat. There was safeguarding concerns raised by the hospital, which we have a record of in the email. And actually it's recorded in his doctor's notes that when he was living in that place and he spoke to his mental health community support officer, that he was feeling a bit better.
Bit of independence.
He had a bit of independence. He was actually thinking about maybe travelling again or doing other things. And then in another breath he'd be saying, I've got to stay at home and be my mother's carer. So in this text message, it said that just to let you know, due to Tim being down again, as can happen with people with bipolar, the family thought it would best that he moved back in with Mum and that they have their support. But also that Mother would like me to let you know that you are now cut out of the family will due to your behaviour and not supporting your brother since he came out of hospital. We'd like to think that we could talk again soon, but it's up to you. Kiss, kiss.
I expect gaslighting there. So, obviously you're dealing with a hell of a lot now. You're not only not able to talk to your brother, you're not able to support anybody, you're not able to know what's going on with your mother, and you've been most definitely cut out.
Yeah. Scapegoated at a grand scale.
So what do you do when that happens? You have to pick up. You have to carry on.
You have to keep trying. Yeah, you have to carry on. We were going through a lot of other stuff. Obviously COVID's going off at this time. Being a DJ, I'd lost all my work overnight, but that was, in the back of my mind because of all this happening, everything going on. I wasn't concerned about that, but at this point you're starting to think, wow, I haven't worked for so long, we don't know what's going on, we've been through so much, and we managed to get away, didn't we, and go away to...
We did. We booked a week to Corfu, managed to get out there.
We managed to get out there for a break, but it was really strange, actually, because when we got there, we got an all-inclusive deal, and I love my food, and I'm like, yeah, it's going to be great. Got there, and I had a constant sick feeling in my solar plexus. I can't describe it. It's just like a constant there, sicky feeling. And it was putting me off my food, which was really annoying me at the beginning of the holiday and all the way through it. But on the last night before we came back, I had what I can only describe as what is a dark night of the soul. It's not a nightmare. It was like you're half conscious, you're half awake, you're half asleep. But I was in a state of panic and anxiety, and this feeling in my chest was getting stronger and stronger, and I was shaking and I was whimpering. And I remember my wife holding me in her arms and comforting me. And when I did talk, I said... At the time, I feel like I'm never going to get to see my mum again, and it was really overwhelming feeling that came in. But I got through it, and it was the last night of the holiday, wasn't it? We came back.
It was the pain and suffering
that we'd been put through to that point.
You never want to see anybody you love in that much trauma and in that much frustration and you know, when your body starts to rack, that's all I can describe.
I was being cut off from everything that I'd ever known in life before. At a fundamental level.
Mike's an incredibly intuitive person. I've always known that since he's come along, and he feels deeply. He's got big heart, and he feels very, very deeply. And the life you've been on has opened you up, and all kinds of things have opened you up. And being a DJ is it does do that. I've looked after many DJs, and it does do that. And it's just, he knew everything was really, 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 really bad.
All right, yeah.
And
I felt lost. I felt like I didn't know what to do.
And so,
but we made a decision when we came back, didn't we?
We made a decision. Yeah,
I made a decision that it was all getting too much.
It was wrong.
And I sat there and I thought, what can I do? Like, I'll go and talk to the eldest member of the family, male member of the family.
Yeah.
And say exactly how I felt, the dangerous situation that Tim and Mother were in, because the last time they were alone together, when he became unwell, dangerous things happened. That's the last thing I wanted. So we went and knocked on his door.
We did, and Mike expressed his concern. That wasn't shared, and it was a fairly short and
abrupt,
non-sweet meeting. And that was in the middle of October.
The last thing I said was that I held him 100% responsible for the dangerous situation that my mother and my brother were being left in, and I feared
that something bad
was going to happen if we didn't sort it out.
So we came home. Mike had, the police had been trying to get the family to mediate. And Mike
I'd been specifically asking, most importantly, 2 weeks before Tim passed, please sort out mediation for me and Tim.
And so that he could just talk to his brother.
I hadn't spoken to him this point.
With a third party.
Since June.
With a third
not even
party.
Properly since May.
To make sure that everybody was safe. And unfortunately,
that never happened.
On the Friday the 30th of October
2020,
I woke up at about 7 o'clock in the morning. Now, as you know, as we all do, life goes on. We're getting on with our life. Woke up about 7:30 in the morning, and I had the most intense pain in my right arm. I suffer with a condition called polyarthritis, and after the assault, my right arm, where I'd been held, was the most painful, but it had subsided before that. Anyway, I woke up and it was such an intense pain that I jumped out of bed, laid on the floor, and was laying on the floor with my arm in the air going, ah, like that. And then I sat bolt upright, and as I sat upright, I can see my front door, and there's 3 peacocks standing in a front line at my door. Now, it sounds really, really strange, but we
have the Henfield peacocks. They're a thing. You
They're
can
a thing
Google them. They're famous.
The Henfield peacocks are famous, so you always feel very honoured when the peacocks come to the street, let alone our door, let alone lining up at our door.
3 of them, yeah.
So all of a sudden, the pain when I saw the peacocks just kind of evaporated really strangely, and then I was like, Mike, it's the peacocks, and we took pictures and put them on Facebook as you do. And then we had our morning coffee, and Mike told me about his dream.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, I woke up in the morning and what happened, but the dream was that came back to me really clearly, really vividly, was that I was sat at my mum's kitchen table, and there's a side door on the kitchen, and I was just sat there talking to my mum. Tim walked in the door, and when I first saw him, I stood up and I was angry because I was being told he was the reason I couldn't come home and see my mum. And I stood up and I was angry at him, but he turned around to me, got on his knees and said, "Sorry, Mikey, please forgive me." And I picked him up and held him in my arms. I said, "Of course I do, bro. Love you." And we hugged, and it was a really powerful, vivid experience. Yeah, and, all this happened in the morning, and then I told my wife that, and
and I was like, well, that's a good sign, and then we got on with our day, Friday morning, and then we sat down to lunch, and they call me Spiritual Sacha. But as we sat down to lunch, I said to Mike, and I kid you not, and this is a absolute God's honest truth, that hand on heart, hope to die. This is not something we've just made up for the podcast, or everything we say is this our authentic truth. I sat down at the table, and I said, "I know this sounds really weird, Mike. I feel like your dad's sitting at the table with us." Now, I never met Mike's dad. He died a long time before.
94.
In 1994, a long time before I came along. But all I can describe it as was a feeling of support and a comforting feeling. And it really just felt like he was comforting us, and he was here and saying that he was here and comforting us, and we were just needed to be strong. It's all like, it's very, very strange looking back at.
What happened next?
It's not something I say every day when I'm sitting at the table. As like, I'm not quite at that level of clairvoyance or anything yet.
No, yeah, you were kind of like.
I was just kind of, but it felt reassuring. It felt comforting and everything. So we finished our pasta.
We did, and you went back to go in your office to have a meeting with someone.
I went to have a meeting with Justin Pywell about our new iStream Radio website. And
early afternoon,
I was sitting at the desk in conversation on WhatsApp
and
video.
I was tidying up in the kitchen after lunch
when there was a knock on the door.
And
and you answered it.
And I answered the door, and it was PC Dan Gale, which is the PC that we asked to go round to my mum's house.
6 months before.
6 months prior. And as soon as I saw him, I knew something really bad must have happened. And he proceeded to tell me that my brother had been pronounced dead. Been found in the sea, in the breakwater, on Shoreham Beach, just by Widewater, not far from my mother's house where he was living, almost directly on the beach behind another one of my family members' houses. And the shock that came over me is like the coldest shock I've ever had in my life. I've dealt with grief, but it was something else. And then obviously, I'd been prevented from seeing him and my mother for a few months at this point, so I'm worried about her also. So I asked the officer if he would please come with me to break the news to my mum. I didn't want to do it alone. I'd not seen her for a while and I didn't know how she was going to react. So he agreed to come over with us. And I remember that drive. I remember
it was the storm was coming in, and it was literally, it's the night before Halloween. It couldn't
getting dark, windy, rainy.
Mike was in complete shock. I drove him to I followed the police car and drove him to his mother's. When we pulled up, we got out with Dan, the police officer, and walked up the driveway. We could hear Tim's dog barking, and all the lights were off, and it was about 4:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, I knocked on the door, and my mother came to the door and opened it ajar, and looked at me and said, "You can't come in. He'll be home in a minute." And I had my wife and a policeman standing behind me. I said, "Mum, no." I said, "You got to let me in. I've got to talk to you." And she said, "No, rather you can't come in." And I didn't want to frighten her. I didn't want to. So I just said, "Okay, I'll let the policeman come in and talk to you, Mum. I'm going to sit outside." And we went and waited in the car. And the policeman went in. And about 5 minutes later, 10 maybe, my other family member, 2 of them, turned up, went in the house. One of them came out, paced up and down on their mobile phone for a bit, went back in the house. Don't think he knew we were sat there watching him. And then next thing, PC Dangale came out and said, "I've told you, Mum, they might call a doctor. She's asked me to tell you to go. She'll call you in a couple of days." Call that never came. And we didn't.
And the police didn't contact us either.
After that day, we went back home. The police never contacted us.
And I think this is the best place for us to break right now. And to know that that everything that happened is everything that we didn't want to happen. And everything that's happened since is everything that we didn't want to happen as well.
No, and it can be stopped.
And families are families. Everybody has difficult things. This isn't about blame. This isn't about shame. This isn't about any of those things. This is about truth. And there's only one time that you can do this, and I know it's something important for you.
It's important for everybody who really loved Tim to know the truth, because that's what he would want you to know. He'd want you to know the truth.
Because truth is everything. It's everything for everybody's mental health. I know Tim was such a carer for many, many, many people like you are.
He was a father figure to many of those boys.
A house parent, somebody that's helping so many vulnerable
brother,
people.
A father figure.
He would not want anyone to suffer in the face of his death.
And we don't.
And especially not his brother that he loves very much. And lots of people are dealing with grief and right here, right now in this day and age. And that's a sad sorry state of affairs, but it is part of life. And obviously, anybody's life cut short, untimely, it's hard, the hardest to deal with, but we all get born and we all are going to die. And it's something that when we lose people and when crises hit, there can be nothing more important than coming together. There can be nothing more important than open communication. And
celebrating those people's lives.
Yeah. Not just go, oh, they're gone, or let's not talk about that now.
I can't believe that what happened. He was such a nice guy.
And it's not that
and that's it.
And it's not that you... Oh, sorry to interrupt. It's not that you're sitting here talking and, oh, I want to go over it. It is about how important it is to talk about these things. I know when you both lost your dad, it was never spoken about, it was never discussed, it was never talked about, and it's only been in recent years that you've been able to, in these recent times, been able to talk about the loss of your dad.
Yeah.
And you've lost your brother, and nothing's going to change that, and nothing, we can all look back with hindsight. It's a beautiful, great thing, but it never changes anything. The most important thing, and I know for you and for Tim, is that your brothers are okay, and all brothers are okay, and your sisters are okay, and everybody's looked after, and everybody's supported, and that they know that they can ring you whenever they want, and that people can reach out, and we are one, like he said in his letter. We are one.
Yeah, and together we're an unstoppable force, is his words.
And together we are an unstoppable force. And I think that's a great place to leave it.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you.
Love
Thank
you.
you, everybody.